How does one instill a culture of learning in organizations, given all the pressures? People even at senior levels say, there's just no time. And then if they're more honest, they say, all we have time for is making sure people are trained in the things that gets this year's agenda met and this year's targets met. So you don't really have a culture of learning. You have a culture of essentially teaching to comply and meet targets.
So your analogy around compliance, I think, really important. It needs to start from the top. It needs to start from, is the leadership focused on long-term value, long-term resilience? And if so, equipping people with the learning, the insight, so that they can innovate to deliver that is really important. But if actually it's just we're just going to keep optimizing for the short term until we hit a barrier and we'll worry about that when we cross it, it's really hard to make the case for equipping people for something that the leadership isn't on board with. Because then you'll just have frustrated people hitting internal cultural barriers when they come back with a sense that the business cares, and then it turns out actually it's just, no, get back to your day job. It was a thing to make you feel good about working for us. So I think it does need that buy-in at the top to say, we know we're going to have to change. Nobody's going to tell us all the answers, but let's set ourselves up with the best possible chance of innovating, making the best choices that we can at each stage, even if we don't know what the right choice is. Ideally, businesses would be seeing the benefits of having made that education. They would be getting a kind of a short-term return on that. The challenge is some of these are long-term bets. So I think there's also a need for vision, recognizing change is inevitable. Not looking only at, well, did we see an increase in profits from education this year? It has to be aligned to a long-term vision and recognition of the transition that's coming. A really high proportion of people, I'd say up in the high 90s, recognize we need some fundamental shifts. Yet all of those people are going back into institutions which are basically carrying on with business as usual. So I would say there's a real dissonance within leadership levels. You don't get to be senior in business without, being really smart and knowing what's going on. And yet we are somehow trapped in constructs of our making. So I think there's a need to better normalize, to give space for people to not just keep going within a broken system now and then do something to give back once they're out of that system, but to find routes to be able to tap into the energy, the innovation. So I think education can be a really valuable way to create and serve this shared understanding. Quite often we'll have a group of senior leaders who'll say, well, I personally believe it, but I'm not sure my peers do. Giving a space to say, you know what, you all recognize this. You don't need to sit in despair. There are very practical, strategic things you can do as an organization to accelerate transition, to prepare for it, to position for it, to contribute to system change. So I think education has an important role to play to help address that dissonance that I think exists, that appetite to do something positive, but a sense of being trapped, and often each individual feeling they are uniquely trapped within a broken system.